Good morning. This is Playing to Win with Mark Henderson Leary and my good friend Brad Freyer. How are you, sir?
Mark, I'm doing okay. How are you, sir?
Well, your mic kind of went wonky there, but it's better now. It dropped out my name, but I think they know my name because it says right there. And if they're in any way confused, I can do this. Let's see, look at that.
Oh, look at how fancy you've gotten.
I'm very fancy.
I'm very
control
impressed.
channel now. And I can
The
do
mix
this.
master.
Yeah, I can do this.
DJ Marky Mark.
That's right.
No,
And people are
that name's already
confused.
taken. Sorry.
DJ Magic Mike, Marky, DJ, there's Marky Mark and the
Magic
Funky
Mike.
Bunch.
No. Yeah, we got that
DJ
one
Magic Mike is different than Magic Mike, and I'm not any kind of Mike, but I am Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. That was certainly, I used to get that in those days.
That one's taken. Yeah.
Yes.
How are you? How was your good weekend? All's well in your world?
Yeah, super expensive. Super expensive weekend, but it was good. Great weekend with my son. First weekend without my daughter. She's back in college. I get to see her this Friday, but yeah, it was a good weekend. Bought some furniture, bought a bike, things like that. How about you?
It's funny you say that you're going to go see your daughter next weekend because we moved our daughter up 2.5 weeks ago, I guess, and. The first home game, the football home game, is this coming Saturday. And so I was talking to her on Friday this past week, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about coming up for the game on Saturday. Love to see you, spend some time with you, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, I mean, you're welcome to come up, which I found funny in the first place as an alumni of the same college and a fan of the football team. I'm like, oh, well, thank you for allowing me to come.
And the payer of the tuition. And
and paying the bills.
It's like, oh, thank you for the permission.
You're welcome to come up. But, Dad, this is the first home game. I'd really like to go with my friends in the sorority and da-da-da-da. So, I mean, just don't plan on seeing much of me. And that's fair. Okay, that's fair. So yeah, I doubt I'll be making the trek.
Okay. Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So you just it's not worth it by itself for you.
Well, I mean, it's a coin toss. Right now, it's a coin toss because we will be going up the next 2 weekends. One weekend's her birthday. The next weekend is parents' weekend. So, if I don't go this weekend, I'll see her the next 2 and maybe even the next 3. So. That weighs into the decision a little bit, but the response of, well, Dad, you can come, but
no promises.
Don't expect to hang out with me.
That's so funny. It's like, well, I'm busy Friday. I can make Tuesday open for you.
Yeah. You want to stay over till Sunday evening? That would be great. No. So
is that because she's so close? Or is that the fact that she's like, Dad, a little distance would be cool. I got some things to do.
She has taken to college like a duck to water. She has found a groove. She's found friends. She's got different things going on, and she does not miss us at all. I don't. Which look, at the end of the day, the only thing I wanted, when she went off to college was that she did not get there and hate it. Regardless of where she was going, you hear too many stories about kids that go off to college and, oh, I hated it there. That school sucked and, blah, 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 because they didn't find their place. And so they project, that whatever the environment is was terrible, yada, yada. And so I just, wherever she ended up, I just wanted her to say, I like it. I'm having a good time. I like the people. I like my environment. And so whenever she says, no, don't bother coming, I'm going to be too busy. That's a good feeling, better than it is a bad feeling.
That's awesome. So the idea is, creating that independence, self-sufficient, self-confident adult. That's amazing. How do you, in this transition, right? So it has a little bit of a binary feeling coming out of high school because it's like you see him every day and then suddenly you see him like hardly at all. And so the checks and balances, the how are you doing process is dramatically different. How do you check in on her and see that the decisions are going the right way, and how do you provide mentoring?
Very unimposing, meaning she was our child that would do a daily download, right? So she would come in from school, even through her senior year, and drop her bag and just be like, here's what happened today. Blah, 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 blah. And she would just talk and share and just very, very communicative. And so going off to college, I put a lot of that in her lap, right? Hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to text you every morning and I'm going to text you every evening. My ask is that you at least reply so I get a proof of life. But you tell me when you have time and when you want to talk, right? This is your world now. You set the tempo for how we communicate. And so I've really kind of given her control of her world, because this is her first step in being independent. And so I don't want to be that imposing parent that's like, hey, I want to talk every night at 6:00.
Yeah.
No, if you're out having a good time and you're doing whatever, don't worry about me. You go do you. And when you have time, I'd love to get caught up.
So you still text her twice a day?
Yep. Yeah. I text her in the morning, just, good morning, usually around 9:00, because that's when I know she'll at least be up and I'm not waking her up. And by the way, I asked, hey, 9:00 usually a good time? Yeah, it's fine. Great. I mean, so much of what I've tried to do is manage expectations by asking questions, right?
So you're a way better dad than I am. I don't have nearly that good of a routine.
But what's interesting, Mark, is so much of what I do as a parent is a reflection of what we teach, the psychology of human interaction, whether it's transactional analysis, whether it's, DISC, whether it's, NLP, whatever it's just trying to manage expectations, right?
Well, that's where I was going to go with this to some extent, because I heard you talking about really trying to get somebody to become self-sufficient, and the transition from at one point teaching, and it's there's a continuum. Like to raise a good kid, you are going to have to use different styles at different times and at different ages and levels of maturity, and leadership and management has no difference in that. You bring in an employee at a given level position and you've got to figure out where they are, and you're going to have to move them to a place that's different. Even if you bring in a senior person, you're going to have a different engagement with them for the first couple of weeks than you're going to have with them in subsequent weeks, months, years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so much of that is just, it's giving them some freedom to make decisions, observing the decisions, making sure that the decisions are correct, when they aren't correct, giving feedback and rerouting, allowing them to make mistakes. I think a lot of it depends on what you need from that person, right? I mean, with your kids, obviously you want them to make good decisions. You want them to be happy, healthy, spiritually grounded, all that good stuff. And so you have from birth until 18 to plant those seeds, right? And so you show by example. There's a lot of things that in the first 3 weeks of her being off at college that we've already identified that she has voluntarily done on her own that reflects on what my wife or I did, right? And we're like, wow, okay, so she actually was paying attention to us. She actually, she's doing this because that's part of our routine. That was, we did that stuff. And so, but with an employee, I think you have to create those expectations a little bit more deliberately, because you have a much shorter window to ramp up and get to that independence. And so, having a good onboarding plan, having clear communication, managing clear expectations. I mean, so much of that is critical right out of the gate, because inevitably, right? I had a teacher. I'm sorry if I'm rambling. I had a teacher in 8th grade, ended up being one of my favorite teachers of all time. But when we showed up the first day of class, he had signs all over the walls talking about, don't do this, you can't do that, raise your hand, sit down, no bathroom breaks, blah, blah, blah. And so, he ran a tight ship for the first few weeks. But after a while, he loosened up. And by the end of the year, we could come and go as we wanted. You sit on top of desk, and in junior high, that's really cool, right?
Yeah.
But the lesson I learned from that, especially as it translates into leadership, is that I always want to err on the side of containment in the beginning, right? Containment meaning not giving too much latitude, having them earn the I hate to say freedom, but earn the autonomy, right? Because it's a lot easier. I use the stable of horses. It's a lot easier to train horses in a pen and then eventually open it up to where they can run free. It's a lot more difficult to have them roam free and then try to corral them.
Right? Yeah, so I agree. So from a parenting perspective, it's maybe a slightly different perspective, but I think the fundamentals are the same. And what you can't do. Oh, here's where I think we agree. What you can't do is change the rules. And so I think that's what you're saying. So like, if you say like, there's no rules until, well, you know what, I'm going to add a rule, then that's disruptive. If you say, if here are you either have more rules than you need that you can kind of let go of, or at least the rule, because here's where I tie in. Like, I want the inalienable rules up front. The rules that I'm very sure are never going to change.
Yeah.
And those are always in place. Everything outside of that, I don't really work with. But I like what you're saying though. It's like if you really, especially for like take it to employees, onboarding is so critical. It's not about lack of autonomy in those first weeks. It's like focus. It's about focus. Get clear on what matters most. And if I let you wander around in too much, I mean, you can talk to people, you can wander around in that sense. But if it's not clear what's expected of you, if you're a sales rep, you can make some phone calls, you can check out some proposals, you can do a little shadowing. You can a little prospecting, a little telemarketing. If it's cross training is one thing, but if it's really unclear to that individual what their job is about, then you send a very different message than like this week is dialing. Like there's a number of outbound dials. That's how you're gonna be measured. And there's nothing. Don't get fancy. This is not closes, not proposals. This is not pricing, not ride-alongs, nothing. This is get the dialing figured out. Then you're really gonna have clear expectations that you can move to the next level.
Yeah. And once you've managed that expectation, right, then if they understand that that's a critical priority, you want to hold them accountable, you want to have checks and balances, but then the more you have those conversations, the more they understand the criticalness, the more success they have in it, then the less you have to oversee it moving forward, right? You build the habits, you build the expectations. How did you phrase it? The rules that will never change, or
inalienable rules. Yeah,
inalienable rules.
Yeah, for sure. Like core values. Really, that's really core values is the essence of that. This is what we always stand for.
Biggest thing, right? Hey, look, I'm going to trust you until you give me a reason not to.
Yeah.
Here are the rules. Play within the rules, and I'm going to assume that you're doing everything correctly until you give me a reason not to. But here's how we're going to make sure. We're going to have conversations. We're going to have accountability. We're going to have check-ins. We're going to do coaching because I want to ensure that you're going to succeed. Whether it's with the kids or with employees, some people have this mindset of, well, I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to be micromanaging. I don't want to, I want them to figure it out. Yeah, but if you want them to figure it out, the problem is that by the time they've identified that something is going wrong, it's almost too late to fix it. Right? And so, I think salespeople are one of the hardest to manage because for ages, what salespeople do to be successful has always been this kind of mythical, magical thing, right? Hey, I'm hiring this all-star thoroughbred salesperson. So, hey, just leave her alone.
Yeah.
Don't talk to her. Don't interrupt her mojo. She knows what she's doing. Stay away from her. And salespeople have learned over the years too how to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing this week? I'm doing my job. I'm selling. Just let me go do my thing. Leave me alone.
On some strategic stuff here.
Yeah, hey, we really want you in the office. Well, if I'm in the office, I'm not selling. Do you really want me in the office? So salespeople have learned how to manipulate that. But, at the end of the day, if you don't know what's going to contribute to success and build that roadmap and hold them accountable throughout, you're going to wake up 18 months from now, they're doing things that are completely unproductive. And now you've got 18 months invested. And so you want to keep them on board, but you don't want to cut them. Well, maybe just another 6 months, maybe. So it's,
Yeah, so this gives me a lot of flashbacks, and so there's some clarity here. So I talked about core values as those inalienable rules, but also you talked about in the way you describe it with all the signs around the room, I think that could be misleading. I mean, it's a lot to keep track of. There's the 400 rules, but I think the message from that was like, I'm the teacher, and don't do anything without running it through me. And I think that's a good message. Okay, it's day one. You're a new employee. Don't do anything I didn't tell you to do. And here's the contrast to that, as opposed to, we're very entrepreneurial here. You're going to wear a lot of hats. You're going to jump in here. You're going to jump in there. And I'm going to give you free reign, and you're going to crush it because you are amazing. And then within a couple of weeks, it's like, I got half a proposal over here. I'm helping this person here, and I'm doing some leadership and management, and I'm doing morale, and I'm organizing the picnic. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, look, I want to take all the variables off the table. This is what week one looks like. This is what success looks like. There's lots of other amazing things we're going to talk about in the future. But this week, you're doing one job. Job.
And also, just to dovetail on, because I agree with you 100%, to dovetail on that, is if I set the tempo very early on that I'm going to be part of your process, that I'm going to ask you questions, that I'm going to challenge you on practices and role playing and, activity count. And if I set that tempo early, right, it becomes natural. It becomes just the way we communicate. It becomes our connectivity. But if I wait until there's a problem, right? Hey, go do your thing, be magical, go kill it. Oh, but now they're doing picnics and they're doing all this other crap that you just mentioned. Well, now I say, hey, Mark, let's sit down and let's look at your playbook. Let's talk about what your behaviors are this week. Now there's infringement, right?
Yeah.
Well, why are you doing this now? You didn't do that before. Why? Do you not trust me? And that's what I talk about when I say start off in the corral, and then you can loosen it up and let them roam the field, because if you've taught them what home is, right, and you've taught them what a safe place is, so that when you open the gates and they go roam the fields, and then you rattle the cage and they come back because they feel comfortable there, versus just day one letting them roam the fields and then trying to pull them and drag them back into the corral. Yeah. Now all of a sudden they feel, well, this is a bad place. Oh, I don't want to be here, right?
Right.
So and I don't. Maybe that analogy doesn't resonate with everybody.
No. Let's see if it resonates with me, and that's all I need right now. So here's the difference to me. Because it's not just the language. I think it's the symbolism. So what's the difference? If somebody shows up and you're going to say, well, this is a competitive sports team. This is the practice field. This is the weight room. This is where you change clothes, and this is where you practice. And we're going to meet after the session, after the practice, and we're going to go through the film and the tape and review the stuff. And here's the whiteboard. That there's a totally different message in that, as opposed to it's recess. It's recess. And go play. There's swings over there. There's a field over there. You can check the balls out over there and whatever. And so the difference, if you put somebody into one mode versus the other, in the first mode, you say, all right, let's come to the room. We're going to debrief. Okay, cool. I'm ready to go. You bring somebody in off the playground. It's like, oh, we're going to debrief. I was watching you play with Joey and you were pushing him. Well, you're in trouble, right? That's what that is. And so, when you were playing kickball, I noticed that you weren't hitting it squarely. Like, what's going on? I thought this was recess. Like, and so it's if you said, so I love what you said to me. It's, you really you bring your people into your company and do not send them out to recess. It is not recess. It is a competitive organization that's trying to win. That involves training, practice, and you've got to build that into your mindset. All right, this is day one. This is week one, and we're going to start practicing, and you're going to get some reps and increase your skill set around some known things. And if you are running a business and you don't know what you're going to tell that person on day one, that's a problem.
I like that analogy. I think almost maybe even more than my own, because I immediately thought about, small business owners and some of the positions that they struggle most with: hiring, onboarding, and coaching and training. And obviously sales is a big one, right? It's one of the ones that's the most difficult to hire a good person, to train them up, to coach them, to hold them accountable. And to your point, I almost feel like, they've bought a football franchise, And they're like, okay, you know what? I understand basic blocking and tackling, but quarterbacks, I really don't understand, exactly how quarterbacks do that stuff. So I'm going to go out and I'm just going to hire, Tom Brady, and I'm going to put Tom Brady in and I'm going to pat him on the butt and say, go get him, buddy.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
they do. They don't say, okay, Tom, hey, come in. Let's, here's what the game plan is going to be. Here's the practice schedule. Here's here's when we're spending time in the film room, in the film room, and da 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 da. And so they just, they basically say, hey, go play good.
Except it's worse than that. It's like, well, Tom Brady's not available, so I'm going to get Brian Hoyer.
I'm going to get somebody that resembles Tom Brady.
And so they played together, and they on the same kind of team. He comes from an organization, nothing but thoroughbreds out there, and get out of his way.
Yeah, they have somebody interviewed, and the interviewer says, "No, I played at North Central Idaho Junior College, but I played quarterback. I know what I'm doing. Just put me in, coach. I'll go do it."
And I don't want to give Brian Hoyer too bad a time, because I actually have some respect for him, but he had a difficult time. But I think it's if you have Tom Brady and you put him on the field, if it's the actual Tom Brady, you're going to get some run out of that. That's actually going to go a ways. But if you're bringing in someone who's not Tom Brady, and you're going to treat him like Tom Brady, which is the case 100% of the time, the actual case, you're going to get hopefully somebody with some positive DNA and some good skill set. But if you don't know how to bring the best out of them, you're going to get nothing.
That's fair. But so regardless of who you bring on, right? Because think about let's stay on the Tom Brady theme. When you bring Tom Brady on, does he miss practices? Is he allowed to show up late? Is he allowed to do what he does what the entire team does, right?
Right.
He shows up to off season training. He shows up to camp. Makes it to practice, film room, team meetings. So even though he is the GOAT, he still has the same expectations that everybody else. He's not untouchable. They don't say, "Hey, don't talk to Tom."
Yeah.
In fact, what does Tom do? Tom actually will probably come to the coach and say, "Hey, I got ideas on how we can do it better. Let's sit down and talk about it."
Well, if you're going to bring a guy in like that, you've got to recognize a couple of things. He's going to want to adapt to the team, and you've got to bring that culture. He's going to fit into what you've got. And if you give him too much latitude, maybe he's going to feel like he's got to be the boss, or not that Tom Brady would do this, but certainly A players are going to be like, well, it was a tight ship where I was before. I like coming in a little bit later. This is cool for me. And so you've got to raise your game as a coach. And so, just be literal about this. If your metaphor is great, if you bring in a guy at that level, and you're not the manager, coach, or owner at that level, it's not going to work. You have to raise your game as a leader and manager. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't know how to manage salespeople or finance people or operations people, which is usually not the case. Usually the people running organizations that I work with are usually come out of one of the two, very commonly operations. But there's some part of the organization you don't understand. IT, that's a good one. Like, I'll hire an IT guy who uses words I don't understand, and that's how I know he's good. And so
that's how I know he's good.
It's brutal. I was in that business a long, long time, and that was so much of the thinking. The weird, they think good IT guy is a weird IT guy, and so that's how no, that's not how it works. But if you can't connect the dots, you don't have to be the craftsperson. Like, you don't have to be able to throw the ball. You don't have to be able to migrate mail from one platform to the other. But you have to know how to lead and manage, and you have to know to talk about accountability, and you have to be comfortable with that. And if it's not you who's doing that, you need to find somebody in your organization who is. You need to promote, train, or find somebody who closes that gap. And if you're the visionary entrepreneur, which is very commonplace to find that spot where management is really not comfortable for you, you're going to have to manage at least one person in the organization. That's probably your integrator, somebody who's really good at managing different types of people. But it is absolutely a non-starter to think that you can use this, you can buy your way out of the problem, that you can use hope as a strategy or past results of this future, or the past results of a star player to create future results. Especially those amazing individual contributors in your firm, those great designers, those great salespeople, those great scientists, they need the very best leadership and management, because that's what helps them make the biggest impact.
So what's the number one excuse you hear from leaders as to why they're not better coaches?
Busy.
Whether it's technique or behavior. What is the biggest excuse you hear from entrepreneurs or business owners as to why they're not a good manager?
Well, I mean, there's several different ones. At smaller companies, they just say we can't afford that right now. We just need to have everybody at this level. I can't get juniors, and there's some truth to that. But you still, it flows over from type of person I need to hire into excuse. Right now, it's abundance. I don't have the time. I don't have the manpower. I don't have the person power.
All right, so I don't have time. Okay, what else?
There's occasionally an I don't know how, or I just need people who know how to do it.
Right. So that's another one that I hear a lot is, well, why can't they just? I mean, I just figured it out. Why can't they?
Right. I can't babysit. I'm not a babysitter. It's not a daycare around here. Yeah. Don't want to micromanage.
Yeah. I don't have time. They should figure it out because that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
I'm not a micromanager. I need self-starters on my team.
People don't want to work. People don't want to work around here. We got to lazy.
Yeah.
Entitled.
Yeah.
Millennials.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's a lot of intellectual justification for why we don't invest the time we know we need to. But as a leader, our number one job function as a manager is to get the most out of our people. It's not to do stuff. It's to rise the tide for our teams, right? I mean, otherwise, why do you have people? I mean, if you're a manager, your job is to get the most out of your team. And so whether you're a manager from the top and you're, the C-level is your team, or, mid-level or manager who has a siloed team, your job is to get the most out of people. But yet we tend to feel more comfortable doing our tasks as opposed to leading people, managing expectations, coaching, training, mentoring, supervising. And there's a lot of excuses that people use as to why they can't.
So there's a lot there. And pardon me. So a couple things that come out of that. The first is,
by the way, we got 2 minutes.
Yeah. And so I'll try to wrap this up. If you're a solopreneur, you're a smaller organization, it's a different world. You are an individual contributor and you're going to have a business on the side, and that's your world. And that's to some extent mine. But if you have a business where you got more than a few people, you got 10, 15, 100, 200, 300 people, you're typing your individual creativity into the system. Your outputs is not what your highest value is. It is your ability to enroll people in your vision and help people reach their highest contribution. So Joe Alapat, great friend, client, coined this phrase, and we got to help people find their 10x. And the 10x is that thing that you do that is 10 times more valuable, 10 times easier, 10 times faster, 10 times something, in some cases 100 times faster, more valuable. And so you've got to help, as a leader, manager, help those people in your organization get into that space. And you got to help them reach their potential in that space. And if your people are struggling to lead and manage, or if you're struggling to lead and manage, it might not be your 10x, and you might need to find another 10x or another thing to do that is your 10x. So to get that enrollment in a powerful vision, to get everybody rowing in the same direction and get the organization to do what it can, you got to get those people in the right spots. It includes a very powerful, important component of leadership and management. Is that us for the day?
Love it. And start with day one.
Yeah, absolutely. Focus. Less is more. Absolutely. So that's our message for the day. We'll get it under 30 minutes. And we will see you next week. Brad, have a great one, man.
You too, Monster. Be well.